Hey everyone, it's Michelle here at Makiki 1988, and I want to thank you for clicking on today's video. This is a very sentimental, valuable bag that I'm going to be talking about today. I'm going to do a quick what's in my sister's Brooklyn bag, and then I'm going to do a quick breakdown for those of you who asked about the process to distress a bag. But I am very pleased with the outcome, and honestly, I'm very happy that I finally got myself to do something that I had been feeling a strong urge to do for a while. So I'll just jump right into the video. So this is a Coach Brooklyn 28 in the color Merlot, and I'll give you a quick overview of this beautiful bag. As you can tell, I did do some customizations. Fortunately for myself, we do have one of the Coach Create craftsmen here in the Dallas North Park area, and so you can add grommets and customize pins. My new sales associate had also done the Ace of Hearts playing card for me, and then I did go through the process to distress this bag on my own as like a special keepsake memoriam for my sister who passed last year from pancreatic cancer. So, I kind of got the idea from a few different things. For those of you who know Lux Lover Carolina, she had done like a sentimental Brooklyn for her dad. She and I had connected, I want to say maybe sometime earlier this year. And I think there definitely was some relativity on the fact that both her dad and my sister passed from pancreatic cancer, which, I mean, no cancer is good cancer, but pancreatic cancer is especially painful and especially aggressive, and very much a difficult experience to watch your loved ones go through. But she had done a sentimental Brooklyn, and then recently I started kind of being a little bit more active on TikTok, and I found that there are a lot of creators or individuals who actually go to Coach specifically to create these kind of like sentimental bags. You'll find ones that do a combination of like homemade DIY stuff or just dressing it up a certain way, memoriam. And I'll be honest, like that really just spoke to me. At the core of who I really am, I would say that I'm a reader, I'm a writer, and I'm an artist. And as much as I love buying brand new bags, I love putting meaning into things. I love using symbolism, and I love having like tokens or pictures or things around me that remind me of the people and the things that I love. And I've been thinking, like, how can I turn these negative emotions into something that can be meaningful or produce something that's beneficial in some way, shape, or form? Like just lying here in my bed crying like isn't helping anything, and I started thinking just about like, what can I do? And I thought back to one of the conversations that she and I had last year, and honestly, she's one of those people who just never felt like they deserved good things or nice things. And I was always like trying to challenge her to like throw that narrative away and like let herself have something nice. And so I was like, okay, I'm gonna buy her a nice purse. I'm just into this purse game. I can show her some good companies, some good brands, some good styles, and we can get it in her favorite color of purple. And like when I brought her the tablet, and I was like looking at stuff, she just looked at me and she was like, and the crazy thing, she said it so sweet. There was no sarcasm in it. And she's just like, Michelle, where am I supposed to wear that to? And I just remember just sitting there looking at her, and we were just kind of like looking at each other for a minute. And like I understood that I think in that moment that she was accepting her fate, that she wasn't gonna be here much longer, right? And I remember just really respecting her for that. I know she and I talked a lot about, everybody wants people to, to rally and to battle and just to fight. You can win this battle. You can beat cancer. But like truthfully, she had been like fighting her whole life, and I really understood in that moment that she was like tired, like globally tired. So for the last several weeks, I've been sitting here crying and, still working through grief and missing her physical presence in a way that I could like, just grab her and hug her. So all that to say, as I was, going through the feelings, I decided, you know what? Fuck her. I'm gonna get her a purse anyway, and I'm gonna wear it, and I'm gonna wear it in a way that she would have done, because, she and I in our younger days, and even, she and I were a lot alike, and I think at some point I just decided I needed to start taking better care of my things. But she was very much a rough and tumble type of person. She and I both grew up playing sports. She got into rodeo and horses and farm life, and somehow became like this country girl. And so I decided that's how I was going to do the bag in her honor. So I'll go into the details of how I distressed it, but essentially, to understand the keepsake part of it, I love the Ace of Hearts. I'm not much of a card player. I think I just gave away the secret that I was not born in Utah. I was born in California, but I was largely raised in Utah, and I was raised in that religion. So cards wasn't ever a big part of my life, but it is something I'm learning now. But I've always loved the idea of the Ace of Hearts being a reminder of just like how we should like approach life and approach people. Again, I love symbolism. And then I distressed the bag to kind of try and give it a little bit of that Western feel for her, like I said, since somehow that suburbs girl became a country girl. And then I wanted to do the feathers to make them look like they were cascading down the bag, with the last feather just kind of resting peacefully. Just as a reminder to her and of a conversation that she and I had, that, just because she's passing doesn't mean that she's disappearing and ceasing to exist, that she'll continue on, and her kids, of course, and in all of our memories. Just a promise to keep her story and her personage alive in all of us, and especially for her kids. So that's the sentimental part of it. So on the inside, I pretty much have my typical carry. I finally pulled out this Coach Outlet Monogram wristlet, which I've been trying to figure out which bag this should go with. And as it turns out, it should go with this bag, because it's got like a brownish maroon color and some navy blue. And I thought that was very appropriate. And then of course, in the wristlet, I just have my typical EDC with all my bathroom stuff, receipts, wipes, what have you. I have got my handy dandy hand sanitizer spray. I'm just using my Coach card holder for today. What else do we have in here? I've got my Coach Outlet sunglasses, which these are a nice, great classic. I think it's like the wide cat eye and transparent gray, but a nice, clean, classic looking sunglass. I have some purse candies because I'm, according to my daughter, in my granny era. And then attached to the inner ring, I have my Dress Up Your Purse key pouch. And in this, I have my gym key, my house key, I have my coin purse. And so that's the open part of the Brooklyn. I think that's one of the reasons why I love this bag, is it's very simple and it's so easy for me to plan, dress up, dress down. It's so versatile. And for the good quality of this bag, it's a really good price point. So love it a lot. And then in the back pouch, I just typically put in like my perfume or my lip products. And so I have my lip duo, which is the Merit L'Avenue, which is a beautiful like raisin color. Honestly, this should be my everyday color. And then my lip oil, which is Sangria, and these two pair so well together. So when I want a little bit more of like a glossy shine, I can do that. And then in that back pouch, as the other part of Memento, my sister did opt to be cremated. And so we all got like keepsake pieces. So this was a bookmark that I received with her thumbprint, her date of birth, her date of transition, and then a poem about missing somebody. So I thought that was a great item to keep in the back as a way of carrying her with me as I carry her purse. And I just laugh because I had no idea where this project was gonna go when I started. I just knew how incredibly sad I was and how incredibly compelled I felt to create this sort of keepsake as an art piece for her that I could keep and wear in and the more worn in it gets, I think the more it'll feel like her versus like a brand new, stiff, shiny bag, because that just wasn't her at all, right? You know, so it's just so funny that, like, honestly, as the project went along, I found myself just really enjoying it more and more. And there were certain like thoughts that just kind of popped in my head, like, oh, you know, as I was like distressing the bag, I was like, oh, this kind of reminds me of like some of her worn down saddles she had when she did rodeo. And especially when I got to the handles, I was like, oh yeah, that's like the horn on the saddle. Okay, I need to brighten that up a little bit over here and smooth that out. And you know, these burnished edges aren't blended well enough. She would definitely have something to say about that. You know, she was very particular about her leather and about her boots. And then all that got me thinking about her discussing like mucking boots. She and her friends kept their own horses, and she was just super duper intentional about taking really good care of them. And she had these really nice, expensive, but really disgusting boots. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna wear the corners down to remind me of her boots. And I wore down, I don't know if you can see this lighting, I wore down the bottom, I sanded the tag, and as the bag got rougher and rougher and started to like really get a good slouch, like this is, for being a brand new bag, this is very, very squishy for the Brooklyn. I was just like, this is her, this is her bag for real. And so what a great project that was. And while I wish I could say that I filmed all the parts of me doing the project, I can't, because as I was working, I was honestly crying for the most part, or it was like 3 in the morning when I would just like wake up and I was like, I gotta go sand. So I did take some video of each of the different stages, and I'll pop those in as I talk about them here. But I figured the best way to walk you through the stages of the bag project would be to bring out my materials. Or most of them, I should say. So I'll pop in the quick short that I had done here about some of the stuff I picked up. Since this was the first leather project that I have done since, I don't know, maybe middle school, when we all made those burnished bookmarks, I decided to not go with like the super high-end products. Now you can go and get some of those higher end products, brands, companies. I know you can get them on Amazon or what have you. I opted just to try out Michael's and some of the stuff that they had. So there are a lot of videos online right now showing you how to distress a bag, or burnish the edges, and I would definitely suggest that you follow and use that. Like I literally, like, I knew how I wanted to do the bag, but I also used AI or Google throughout every step, because I wanted to make sure that I didn't use any chemicals that actually decompose the leather. I know there's some very popular like TikTok videos and other stuff going around about like using bleach or using this or that, and I would just recommend that you don't, because it'll actually damage the bag. In my research, because the first thing you have to figure out is what the tanning process is of the bag that you used. And Coach website says that this is a semi-vegetable tan, which leads me to believe that somewhere in the process of this bag, there's probably an oil-based tanning process. And I think that that became apparent to me as I was sanding down. So I just went with that. I did purchase all my products meant for vegetable-based or water-based tanning solutions, even though I feel like there has to have been some oil-based process in this. I just did that. It is what it is. So first thing you have to do is like get your supplies together. I would definitely get some old rags, get some old t-shirts. Oftentimes, like when I was working on mine, I'd have like this old t-shirt in my lap, and this would be like my t-shirt for rubbing the gel in, or just wiping some of the excess liquids off. So I definitely recommend having that. And then you'll want to use something that cleans the bag, but also something that starts to help break down that initial sheen on the bag. I used rubbing alcohol, and it is a very slow process, so you'll probably have to do it a couple times. I did also then use a little bit of white vinegar. I didn't want to bring my bag down to an all white or all tan base, which I think a lot of people online have. I just really wanted to lighten up some spots and darken others. And my main point when I went into this bag before I decided to do all the distressing was I really wanted more of that like burnished look. So then with that, you'll also want like some applicators or some cleaning tools. So I would recommend Q-tips, cotton swabs, another dirty old rag, And then for tools to apply any color or gel or sheen, I would recommend like foam brushes or daubers. They do have a lot of paint daubers. That probably would have been a little bit better tool to use than the paint brushes. Next, you'll want to make sure that you have some gloves. Even though the products that I used were all water-based, I didn't want to stain my nails or my fingers because like I wasn't trying to look like a kid fresh out of art class. Your sandpaper is going to be a pretty important part of the project. They recommend that you have a series of sandpaper moving from a larger grain, like 400, to a finer grain, like 800, 900, 1000, 1200, as you're trying to get more of that smooth burnishing finish. So I started with 400 to really strip the first outer layer of the sheen and like layers of paint. Use that to get like the lighter parts of the leather, say here on the handles how I done, the distress marks on the front, the bottom, the back, essentially where I wanted to remove a lot of color. And then you go back, you wipe it gently with a damp cloth. I use a layer of alcohol again. You have to let the bag dry, and that's the big part. You have to let the bag dry in between each layer or each process, because one, you want to make sure that it's clean, and two, you want to make sure that you're not over or under processing certain areas of the bag, because again, we don't want to ruin the integrity of the bag. So I started with the 400, and then I went to the 600, and then I went to the 800 to smooth everything out. And then I did go back down to the 400 on certain areas to reveal that lighter color again. So where I have highly distressed the bag, I repeated that process back to the 400, especially because I not only was sanding the bag, but I also used an antiquing gel, and I used some black paint to help create that more vintage or burnished look on the bag. So I didn't want to buy a whole lot of sandpaper. I just bought one package from Michael's that had 400, 600, and 800. Now, as the bag ages and as I own it again, and maybe as I have a little more energy, I might go to Home Depot and go get one of those higher grit and get one of those higher level sandpapers, like 1000 or 1200, that are really meant to kind of create like that nice sheen, glossy sanding finish. But for now, this will do. I'm very pleased with where we're at. Oh, I did also want to mention that at some point there were some areas that I was having a hard time getting the paint to remove. So I did some research and found that goof off is okay. I didn't use a whole lot. But again, after you use the goof off, clean the bag, let it dry again before you move to the next step in the process. Okay, so once I did that first initial clean, which my first round was sand everything down, wipe it with a damp cloth, let it dry. Then I went in with some Phoebe's Leather Colors black paint. And I only did that on the edges of the bag because again, my goal was to have a burnished look. I feel like that's where Coach really kind of missed the mark on this Merlot bag, that it should have had some depth in it, like how they had done on their Empire. So I was like, well, fine, I'll do it myself. Be very careful with the black, use a very small brush and apply it in small areas because the black just soaks right in. I'm gonna let you know that right now. So then after I did the black, then I went in with my first layer of Phoebe's Vintage Gel, and I did this in the color medium brown because I felt like it would go very well with the Merlot color. They do have a lighter like antique brown, but they also have an antique black, which I definitely suggest. And this is a really great product to use because I felt like it actually helped to rehydrate the leather a little bit. Plus you can apply it in small amounts and you kind of just like massage it in and massage it outward. And you can get more of that like antique or vintage look that you're looking for. Or if you want a deeper color, you can do multiple layers. I really like this product and felt that it brought sheen to the bag before I even like sealed the bag closed. So my first application, again, sand it, wipe it down, paint the edges black, put the antique gel on, okay? I'll let it dry overnight. The next morning I went back and I started by sanding where the layers of color. That was my first goal, is to blend everything. So where I wanted like the central parts of my bag or the highlights to be lighter, then I sanded backwards. So I was first trying to blend the lighter parts of the brown, and I was trying to blend the brown with the black so that there was a very easy transition between the colors. That'll take a little bit more time. Just be patient, don't rush everything, and work on the bag in small parts. Then I wiped it with a gentle cloth and I let the bag dry. I then went back in with the alcohol again and removed some additional color from the bag, again to lighten up, to create some variation. And then I did use a little bit of vinegar, and then that's when also when I had used a little bit of the goof off, especially around the parts I was trying to like really highlight without damaging the bag. Let the bag dry again. I did not go back in with the black. I only put that on one time. I did go back in with the vintage gel, a very light color, massage that in a lot more, and really try to create that variegated look where it starts out dark and then moves to light. Everything in circles, 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 circles. Sanding in circles, cleaning in circles, using alcohol in circles. Small artistic circles, right? And then just remember, like from an artistic perspective, when you're looking for color variation, you start with the darkest darks, so my edges first, and then you focus on the lightest lights. So the areas that I really wanted to highlight and have stand out. So then you go back and you make your dark areas darker, and then you go back and you make your light areas lighter. And then you work on the midtones, which is when you're trying to blend that transition from light to dark and dark to light. It sounds more complicated than it is, but it's not. If you remember nothing else, just remember your darkest darks and then your lightest lights, and you go back and forth, and then you work on the midtones. So then after I put the second coat of the antique gel on, I went back and I sanded again. I used vinegar and alcohol again, and I let the bag dry overnight. And then I put the gel away, and I put the goof off away, and I put the alcohol away, and I put the paint away, and I worked with just the sandpaper, and I moved back and forth between the areas that I wanted to keep dark and the areas that I wanted to have lighter. Really just trying to emphasize them, and most especially trying to blend in the areas that had that change in color. And then I went in with the 400 to really kind of strike, and striking motion to create those highly distressed areas, like where we have this natural kind of crease, the divots here, the marks I did around the magnet, the marks I did around the magnet in the back, the pocket, the edges, and the bottom, and the corners. And the way that I kind of figured out where I wanted to really mark those was one, I do have another Brooklyn that's very worn in, and so I was looking at where those natural creases are based on where things kind of hang, where things are. And then when the bag was wet, I actually would put 2 books in overnight and kind of start creating the crease mark of this bag. And that's why I was like, okay, so it has a natural crease here. I'm gonna strike that, and I'm gonna strike it in different ways. And when you're sanding, you're gonna sand with the contours of the bag. So, there's like a natural flow of the bag that comes down in this direction, so I'm sanding in this direction. There's a curve of the bag that comes down this direction, so I'm sanding in that direction. And then, just again, following where you'll see here, if you look closely, where the books were, I let them be in as I was sanding, where the pocket is, and I wanted to pull out some of those natural marks in the bag based on like things that you would carry in it. And then I went back one last time with a little bit of alcohol to rub that stuff off and let it dry all the way. And then I went in finally with the leather sheen, and this is your top coat. This is what's gonna seal the bag. I recommend sealing it, but you are gonna still go back and sand that. But I sealed the bag, I let it dry overnight in front of the fan. And it's gonna create, this one in particular creates a very high sheen. And that's probably the only thing I would change, was maybe to go to Lowe's or to go on Amazon and find like a semi-matte or a semi-gloss sheen versus this one I think is a very high sheen. And then I went back over the next morning and I did an overall sanding of the bag to start breaking down that sheen. And then I went in with a 600 and the 800 and the 400 to break the sheen down while still maintaining it in some of the important areas, but trying to get the feel of the bag back to how the Brooklyn normally would be, because that sheen is an acrylic sheen. And I did also seal the interior of the bag because, as you know, the Brooklyn is not sealed. And in the darker Brooklyns, you do tend to have color transfer. I didn't want to have color transfer on my other leather items. So I did that. So essentially, sanding more than anything, wipe the bag before you wipe the bag clean in between sessions. Don't overdo the color. Don't overdo the sanding. Take your time. Don't rush the project. Everything in circular motions. Work on your darkest darks and then your lightest lights. and then repeat the process until the bag looks to the level of distress and burnishing that you want. And then once I got to the level where I felt like the bag was worn in enough that I wanted, and then I would continue to wear it in through natural wear, then I decided to go ahead and pull out my Coach leather cleaner, and then I moisturized it and I let that dry overnight, and then went back and I cleaned it again and I moisturized it again, and that helped to create a better like natural breakdown of the sheen, but also to really soften the bag. And then both times as it was drying overnight, I had the 2 books in there to kind of pull on the bag and help soften it up. And I really, truly am pleased with how it turned out. This was a very meaningful, purposeful, helpful project. And I will say that I did not know that I had that level of emotion still in me in processing her passing. But I'm so glad that I did this, because the outcome is a positive outcome versus, so often I think as we're grieving, we lean towards very negative things to try and help us cope. And this was one of those things where it's like I wasn't trying to avoid the emotion. I wasn't trying to fix anything. I was trying to allow myself to feel and to process the emotion in a healthy way. And now I have something very physical that I can hold and I can carry that has like memories imbibed in it of her. And I think when I look at it, like, that is truly what art is, that deepest, truest level of expression of feelings and emotions. Art exceeds like what words and writing can't, right? And so my sister's name is Teresa. So this is Teresa's bag. And I will tell you, this very, very quickly went from being a bag that like, yeah, I think I can dress Merlot, to like, this is my favorite bag and I don't know when I'm gonna move out of this, and I don't know if this will ever fully go into storage. But I love it.